is called Ripples on the Surface from 1993. The second one is called Roots from Regarding Wave, published in 1970, and the last one is called Endless Streams and Mountains from Mountains and Rivers Without End from 1996. So not in chronological order, but rather in thematic order. Because I want to show that Snyder proposes the entanglement of nature and culture. So there's kind of nature culture here that Latour and Haraway and others have been talking about. So there's already here a performance of nature culture. That's what I... So ripples on the surface. Ripples on the surface of water were silver salmon passing under, different from the sorts of ripples caused by breezes. A scudding plume on the wave, a humpback whale is breaking out in air up, gulping herring. Nature, not a book, but a performance, a high old culture. Ever fresh events scrapped out, rubbed out, and used again. The braided channels of the rivers, hidden under fields of grass. The vast wild, the house alone. The little house in the wild in the house. Both forgotten. No nature. Both together, one big empty house. So No Nature is the title that we used for our translation, and literally it in Portuguese would be nenhuma natureza. In Spanish would be no, I don't know how to say it in Spanish, but we moved it into no nature, like as if nature is not there, or there is no nature, there is a performance. Snyder proposes living in this no nature, and he was a poet connected with the deep ecology movement in his first, through his life, but in the beginning he was more connected with it. And I think this poem here is called Roots, represents his proposition of being in place, which he considers as a dialectical relation. So it's called Roots. Roots. Draw over and dig the loose hash soil. Who handles are short, the sun's curse long. Fingers deep in the earth search roots, pull them out, feel through. Roots are strong. So like building roots, but also excavating, that would be a way of being in this performance. And finally, I want to read, this is a longer poem. It's called, in Portuguese, Montanhas e Rios Sem Fim. It's also a pun for the people here in the seminar, because we've been talking about mountains and a little bit about rivers and how they move, namely glaciers, they move. So in terms of performativity of nature, Snyder also proposes here this endless streams and mountains. A note before the poem is that the poem is about a scroll, a Chinese scroll of nature painting or landscape painting, which in Chinese is said a scroll of endless stream or of mountains and rivers moving. That's the idea. And Snyder takes this idea and describes the scroll, but also in terms of movement. And in the end, you will see, I hope as I read it, in the end, he also reads the comments, so the paratext to the scroll. And in the end, he moves out of the museum into California, because the scroll now is in North America. And so there's a confusion here between representation and entanglement. And that's Snyder's proposal. Endless streams and mountains. That's the Chinese name for it, and I cannot say it. Clearing the mind and sliding into that created space. A web of waters streaming over rocks. air misty but not raining. Seeing this land from a boat on a lake or a broad, slow river coasting by. The path comes down along a lowland stream, slips behind boulders and leafy hardwoods, reappears in a pine grove. No farms around, just tidy cottages and shelters, gateways, rest stops, roofed but unwalled workspace, a warm, damp climate. A trail of climbing stair steps forks upstream. Big ranges lurk behind these rugged little outcrops. These spits of low ground, rocky uplifts, layered pinnacles aslant, flurries of brushy cliffs receding. Far back and high above, vague peaks. A man hunched over, sitting on a log. Another stands above him, lifts a staff. A third, with a roll of mats or a lute, looks on. A bit offshore, two people in a boat. The trail goes far inland, somewhere back around the bay, lost in distant foothill slopes, and back again at the village on the beach, and someone's fishing. Rider and walker cross the bridge above a frothy braided torrent that descends from a flurry of roof-like flowers, temples tucked between cliffs. A side trail goes there. A jumble of cliffs above, ridge tops hedged with bushes, valley fog below a hazy canyon. A man with a shoulder load leans into the grade. Another horse and a hiker. The trail goes up a long, cascading stream bed, no bridge in sight, comes back through chinquapin or liquid ambers, another group of travelers. Trails end at the edge of an inlet below a heavy set of dark rock hills. Two moored boats with basket roofing, a boatman in the bow looks lost in thought. Hills beyond rivers, willows in a swamp, a gentle valley reaching far inland. The watching boat has floated off the page. At the end of the painting, the scroll continues on with seals and poems. It tells a further tale. Wang Wenwei saw this at the mayor's house in Ho Tung Town, year 1205. Wrote at the end of it, "The fashioner of things has no original intentions. Mountains and rivers are spirit, condensed. Who has come up with these miraculous forests and springs? Pale ink on a fine white silk." Later that month, someone named Li Hui added, "Most people can get along with the noise of dogs and chickens. Everybody is cheerful in these peaceful times, but why are my tastes so odd? I love the company of streams and boulders." Tian Xie of Wei Lo, no date, next wrote, "The water holds up the mountains go down in the water." In 1332, she soon adds, "This is truly a painting worth careful keeping, and it has poem colophons from the Sung and the Qin dynasties. That it has survived dangers of fire and war makes it even rarer." In the mid-17th century, one Wang To had a look at it. "My brother's relative by marriage, Huan Sun, is learned and has good taste. He writes good prose and poetry. My brother brought over this painting of his to show me." The great Qing dynasty collector Liang Xingpiao owned it, but didn't write on it or cover it with seals. From him, it went into the imperial collection down to the early 20th century. Shang Ta Xian sold it in 1949. Now it's at the Cleveland Art Museum, which sits on a rise that looks out toward the waters of Lake eerie. Step back and gaze again at the land. It rises and subsides. Ravines and cliffs like waves of blowing leaves. Stamp the foot. Walk with it. Clap. Turn. The creeks come in. Strain through boulders, mountains walking on the water. Water ripples every hill. I walk out of the museum. Low gray clouds over the lake. Chill March breeze. Old ghost ranges, sunken rivers, come again. Stand by the wall and tell their tale. Walk the path, sit the reins, grind the ink, wet the brush, unroll the broad white space. Lead out and tip the moist black line. Walking on walking underfoot, earth turns. Streams and mountains never stay the same. And there's a note which I think is part of the poem. Note, a hand scroll by this name, Mountains and Rivers Without End, showed up in Shanxi province, central China in the 13th century. Even the painter was unknown. Even then, the painter was unknown. A person of the Sung dynasty. Now it's on Turtle Island. Unroll the scroll to the left, a section at a time, as you let the right side roll back in. Place by place unfurls. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thanks very much. I want to move on to our final poet reading this evening, who is my co-chair, and Juan Carlos Galeano, who I've increasingly come to think of as my brother, and he always addresses me as brother, and that makes, I can't tell you how good that makes me feel, and it really does speak, I think, for an affinity of